Williston Development Review Board meeting of July 9th, 2024. My name is Pete Kelly. I'm the chair of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. Zoom attendees, please stay muted unless it's your turn to speak. For Zoom technical questions, contact staff through the Zoom chat. Let's begin tonight by taking a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Nate Andrews.
Here.
Paul Christensen.
Present.
Lisa Braden-Harder.
Here.
Scott Riley is absent. David Turner is absent. And the chair is present. So we have 4 in attendance, the minimum required for to conduct this meeting for a quorum. The Development Review Board follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings pursuant to Williston Unified Development Bylaw, Chapter 6, Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as state statute, and expounded upon in the staff reports for each public hearing application. As a volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance. For any public hearing tonight, this is a question to the DRB members. Do any members wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest?
No.
No.
Does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? Okay. Very good. Tonight we have a number of items on the agenda. We're going to start with a public forum. Then we've got a certificate of appropriateness, and we have 3 discretionary permits. So first order of business is the public forum. This is for an opportunity for people who are either here in person or participating by Zoom. Are there any Zoom participants?
There are.
Okay. Or the members participating by Zoom to weigh in on topics not on tonight's agenda. So this is to address the DRB on topics that are not on tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to address the board? Okay, hearing none. First order of business is agenda item number 2. It's a certificate of appropriateness, HP 24-02. Would the applicant please come forward?
Hi, that is me. That's Matt Parisi. I'm here. I'm the applicant.
Hey, Matt, would you, you stated your name. Would you state your address for the record, please?
Yes, 7997 Williston Road, Williston, Vermont.
Great, thank you and welcome. Staff goes next.
Pull it up. I can't for some reason.
On any of the computers? Alrighty, thank you, Pete. This is a request for a certificate of appropriateness in the village. The property address is 7997 Williston Road. The property is known as the Lampman House in the Historic Sites and Structures Survey. It's located in the National Register Historic District. The applicant is proposing to replace the existing slate roof on the main block with asphalt shingles. There are 2 front porches and a rear addition that currently have asphalt shingles. Those can remain as is and be replaced in kind. The main item for tonight for the DRB is the main block slate roof. This home was constructed in the mid-1800s, circa 1849, and it is described in the survey as having a gable front main block as the original section of the house with side L's that were added later. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee reviewed this application on July 2nd and provided 2 recommendations for the DRB. One, that there be material consistency between the main block roof and the porch addition roofs if the preferred material is a non-slate. So for example, if you were to go with asphalt shingles, have them all match. If it were to be recommended as a metal roofing, have it all match. The only instance where there could be a difference is keeping the asphalt shingles on the porches, and if the slate were to be required to remain on the front. In terms of their second recommendation for material preference, they recommended asphalt shingles, artificial or real slate. The bylaw has requirements for historic design review in Appendix H. The statements in Appendix H are, quote, incorporate elements of the original building, structure, or landmark into the renovation scheme. Do not obscure original materials. Do not alter the shape of original openings such as windows or doors. Do not obscure the facade or facade details by covering with the materials such as metal or plastic, etc. And goes on to say, respect the original character and period of the building, structure, or landmark. Do not try to make it look historically older than it really is. This devalues what is truly historic. And most importantly, it says, do not modernize the architectural features of a building, structure, or landmark. The DRB will note in your packets that there are updated findings of fact that I provided to you this evening. Matt, this is uploaded on the document section of the DRB webpage. So I provided a few more findings of fact for the DRB to consider. The DRB would need to adjust conclusion of law number 2, whether the proposed material does or does not respect the original character, and then the DRB could add conditions of approval. To close out my staff report, I want to note the precedent for slate in the historic village. All these applications took place in 2022. So there was a request in 2022 for 8099 Williston Road. The property owner wanted to replace the slate with shingles. The HAC recommended that the asphalt shingles would be okay. The DRB required slate. Secondly, 7921 Williston Road. The applicant was proposing to replace real slate with synthetic. The DRB required real slate. And then lastly, at 8031 Williston Road, there was a zoning violation where the property owner removed the slate without a permit, put on shingles. As part of the resolution of that zoning violation, the DRB required that the street-facing block have the slate replaced and the porch have the slate replaced, and then those shingles could remain on that north side that's not visible from the road. So that's the precedent for slate in the village. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Matt, what do you have to supplement Emily's staff report?
Well, I presented this already to the HDAC. The building, the roof is not readily visible from the road because we have significant growth of trees. So from the visual standpoint, you wouldn't be able to tell what the roofing material was unless you got up close to it. It's an unreasonable financial burden. There's inconsistencies in your findings regarding somebody had, 8099 had to do full slate. Then somebody decided, the building right next to mine was put all shingles, but was in violation. So then you guys allowed them to have half shingles and half slate. So there's a real mix here going on, but realistically, this comes down to it's just an unreasonable financial burden for this building and just in general. And the building itself has maintained its historic, consistent use, what really made it historic in the first place. There's a business being run out of the front, and then a residence in the back. That's what Dr. Lampman used it for. So I mean, I kind of see this as a, this is I'm kind of just jumping through the hoops right now. I already know what your preferences are and what the most likely outcome is, but this is a required step.
Okay, thank you, Matt. DRB members, any questions for the applicant or staff?
When you bought the place, were you made aware of the fact that there was the village zoning district and that there were restrictions as part of the homes in it?
No.
Interesting.
I will just add that I don't really see any relevance on that because
Just ask.
it's the buyer's responsibility to know the zoning of a property in which they're purchasing.
Sure. I mean, the truth be told, I mean, I do have it in the minutes of the HDAC meeting that, you know, even one of the members of the HDAC sees this as completely unreasonable and it's just an undue burden on private homeowners. I could understand if we were gonna gut the building and put vinyl siding on and all vinyl windows and there'd be no wood and it was be completely changed. But we're talking about a roof and, again, it's unrealistic. I mean, the alternative is we can keep patching the roof and that's going to look worse than asphalt shingles. So, I mean, and then the other alternative is I take this to environmental court, and I think there's a lot of inconsistencies in the different findings of the DRB over the last couple of years.
Matt, you looks like you mentioned the asphalt shingles, which I do appreciate that you found something that looks like a quality product. Even though it's man-made, it's making an attempt to look something like real slate. But there's also something about union corrugated, and there's a link that goes to a bad page. Is metal something that you're still thinking about here, or are you set on wanting to do?
I mean, so a little background on me. We build buildings, but we don't have any experience in slate. It's not something I really want to get into at this point. So we build and sell buildings. We're a small developer. We own about 30 rental properties, but I don't, basically no one builds, re-roofs a building with slate anymore. It's probably statistically less than 5%, right? Probably less than that even. So the metal would be my preference because that's what that's what we do best. But if we have to do shingles, we'll do shingles. But again, that's, my preference is metal, but the HDAC didn't want metal. So, I kind of see the shingles as a meeting point.
So I'm not able to click through this link. It's a bad link. What kind of metal were you talking about?
Standing seam, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was considering what's called their master rib product, which would be considered a corrugated metal roofing product.
So that's not the type that's finished on site. That's not standing seam. That's a panel, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We make barn.
And the original barn in the back actually has a corrugated metal roof on it.
So the hack did discuss metal with the applicant. The product that was proposed has a similar appearance to standing seam. It's not that narrow, wavy corrugated metal. It looks more like standing seam. The minutes state that the applicant explained his preference for metal over standing seam, but the number one preference is asphalt shingles, and that's, I think, the reason why the hack didn't include that in their list of recommended materials, because they were leaning towards the architectural asphalt shingles.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. DRB members, any other questions?
No. Nope.
Members of the audience, both in person and Zoom, any questions? Any comments? Okay. Matt, any final?
Yeah, my final question is have any of these actually been taken to environmental court yet? Have any of the other applicants for these previous? I can ask Emily this later on, but I'm really just.
Emily,
So-
of those three that you referenced in your staff report, are you aware of any of those having gone to E-Court?
None of those applications were appealed, no.
Okay. Anything else, Matt?
Oh, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna close, HP 24-04 at 7:18. Thank you. Okay, next up is, DP 09-01.27, Riley Properties LLC and Snyder FC Commercial Properties LLC. Good evening, gentlemen. Andy and Chris, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Chris Snyder with Snyder Homes, or Snyder FC Properties LLC in Shelburne, 4076 Shelburne, Shelburne.
Andy Rowe, Snyder FC Commercial Properties, 4076 Shelburne Road, Shelburne.
Great, thank you. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Pete. This is a request for a discretionary permit to subdivide Lot C2, a parcel just over 3 acres, into 2 smaller parcels. Lot C2 would be 2.25 acres, and it would have Building E, the LL Bean building, on it. And the newly created lot will be C2A, which is 0.85 acres, and it would have 27 Market Street on it. This is a building without any current tenants. So Building A is the last footprint remaining in Finney Crossing, a master plan development that began its permitting 21 years ago in 2003. And Building A has an approved design. Pending the submission of final plans, it can begin construction soon. Staff recommends that you take testimony and close the hearing and approve the application tonight. I do want to note a typo in your staff reports, in that recommended action table. It should just say that we recommend approval with conditions as drafted. So in terms of permitting history, Building A got its administrative certificate of conformity back in January. And then the layout for this block dates back to 2021, when site layout and architectural design for Building E, the LL Bean building, went through discretionary permit review. Conservation Commission and Historic Advisory Committee recommendations were not required. Public Works and Fire did not have any comments on this application, nor were any public comment letters received at the time of mail out. I do want to note that in June of 2024, the bylaw was amended. Form-based code, which was an overlay district, is now a formal zoning district, codified in Chapter 32 of the bylaw. And it is not to be confused with the remaining Taft Corners zoning district, which is where the annex is located. So Taft Corners Form-based zoning district is its own thing now. The DRB may recall a similar subdivision in June of 2023, DP 0901.26, across the street. This was to subdivide a lot in order to allow for the hotel and the 40-unit apartment building. Both of those are under construction. The key difference here is Building A is a footprint that was vested in the prior site plan approval that existed before form-based code. And thus, this subdivision was not required before the certificate of conformity. So typically in form-based code, you subdivide your lots, then you get your permit to build. This is happening a little bit differently because this block is vested in a pre-form-based code site plan. In terms of the project elements, standard recommendations are proposed. It complies with the plat and monument requirements of Chapter 12. It complies with the dimensional standards of form-based code, particularly that the lot frontage allows for a building footprint meeting the minimum or maximum frontage requirements. And it complies with the regulating plan as well. What follows are findings of fact, conclusions of law, and standard conditions of approval. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Emily. Gentlemen, so if you could address two points, please. One is, do you have anything to supplement Emily's staff report? That's number one. And number two is, have you read the proposed conditions of approval, and do you have any concern about the way they're proposed?
No questions, no concerns about the conditions. Right?
Okay. DRB members, questions?
Just a curiosity question. Any idea who's coming?
No.
Okay.
Members of the public, or members of the public participating in Zoom, any questions for the DRB? Hearing none, I'm going to close DP 09-01.27 as 7:24. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, DP 24-15. This is engineers construction. Ken and Jesse, welcome. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Ken Pigeon. I'm with Engineers Construction, and I'm not going to touch the mic this time.
And just for the record, your address, Ken?
Address is the business address.
Business address, yes.
Would be the physical address is 98 Engineers Drive.
Great. Thank you. Jesse?
Jesse Carswell, Krebs and Lansing Engineers, 164 Main Street in Colchester.
Great, thank you. Staff is up next.
All right, thank you, Pete. This is a request for discretionary permit. Oh, disappeared on me. Hold on one moment. Try that again. There we go. All right. This is a request for a discretionary permit review to develop a 2,300 square foot addition to an existing building at 99 Engineers Drive in the Industrial Zoning District West on a 1.3 acre parcel. The existing building is occupied by a repair garage, 2 tenants. The vacant space and the addition will be occupied by ECI for vehicle maintenance and will include a pressurized vehicle wash system. The existing building is quite old, and like most of its neighbors on Engineers Drive, is non-conforming with the bylaws in several areas. I will discuss that in a moment. Staff is recommending approval of the application with conditions as drafted. For the project history, there's no relevant project history from besides the pre-application that the DRB reviewed in February. Public Works did require provide a comment memo, and the fire department did as well. The DRB can adopt the comments from the fire department as conditions, but only to the extent that they can be enforced by the statutory authority of zoning. The fire department standards, review standards are select board policy, and where they are not contained in the bylaws or another duly adopted ordinance of the town, they cannot be enforced by the DRB. There were no public comments at the time of mail out on July 3rd. Moving into the pre-application recommendations, I'll just highlight the relevant chapters if that's okay. For outdoor storage, at pre-application, the DRB requested that outdoor storage areas should be defined on the site plan at discretionary permit, and that they should relocate the outdoor storage along the northern property line outside of the 9-foot buffer. They decided that the landscape buffer should not be provided on the northern property line. The applicant's proposed site plan does comply with this in almost all of the, it complies except for on the eastern property line where there is a class 2 wetland. Chapter 29 discussion covers this. Chapter 14 for vehicle and bike parking. At pre-application, There was a note to confirm that the end-of-trip facility is sufficient to serve both 98 and 99 Engineers Drive if the properties share parking. The car and bike parking proposed do comply, and they comply for 99 Engineers Drive. Those two are separate. For snow storage, we did require that the applicant show that, the DRB required that the applicant show that the snow storage meet the water quality requirements, and confirm how solid waste was stored and screened from public view. Compliance is anticipated for this. The applicant relocated snow storage, but now must demonstrate compliance with Chapter 16. The solid waste storage location complies as proposed. And then the DRB did state that additional street trees should not be provided along Engineers Way, should say Drive. The ash tree that is existing on Engineers Drive should be removed and replaced. Compliance is also anticipated for this. No additional street trees are proposed, and you'll see a condition for the ash tree to be removed. For Chapter 29, the DRB required that the discretionary permit show all wetlands and buffers. The development should not encroach on the wetland buffers, except where it has the right to do so. And additionally, it cannot encroach on the wetlands. Compliance is also anticipated for this. Chapter 29 discussion covers this. For the zoning district, Chapter 36, the dimensional standards comply as proposed. They are below the maximum building height, and the lot frontage is also compliant. At pre-application, the DRB discussed an average setback exemption for this property, and there was a calculation done at 23 feet. This setback has not changed and complies as proposed. There are 2 existing parking spaces in the northwest corner of the lot, which are an existing nonconformity. The parking will be retained and striped, and 1 will be made ADA compliant. The alterations are allowed under the bylaw because they do not increase the degree of nonconformity. For outdoor sales and storage, the proposal complies. Once again, at pre-application, there was discussion about the front and side setbacks, which were both out of compliance at the time. The applicant has proposed outdoor storage areas that comply with these setbacks. And then lastly, the rear setback we'll discuss with Chapter 29. And there are a number of nonconformities on the parcel. As I've mentioned, I'll just name them. Actually, I'm not going to read those verbatim. But the DRB has power to correct nonconformities where they see them reasonably proportionate to the scale of development. These nonconformities are referenced throughout this report. For access, connectivity, and traffic studies, the proposal...
So just as a point of clarification, Andrew, so staff's not recommending that the nonconformities be brought into being conforming. Is that correct?
Not all of them, that is correct. You'll see throughout the discussion that there are places where staff is recommending that the site become more compliant. Given the number of nonconformities, it wouldn't be proportionate to the scale of development that's proposed to require all of them to comply.
Thank you.
So the 3 that you're pushing on is, we're seeing in 21, 22, and 23?
Yep, I'll get there. So for Chapter 13, the proposed plan complies. The driveways comply with the requirements of Chapter 13. Additionally, the 6 parking spaces that are existing on Engineers Drive will be retained. They back onto a road owned by the applicant, so this is allowed. And then lastly, the parcel has a long curb cut on Engineers Drive that it serves the 2 existing garage bays. These are acceptable as they are necessary to serve the existing and proposed uses of the property. Chapter 14, parking. The proposal complies as proposed. Table 14A establishes the maximum number of off-street parking spaces, with a requirement of 80% of the maximum. Industrial uses have very diverse requirements for parking and start at 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet. The 8 vehicle parking spaces proposed meet the requirement. You can see the table below shows the vehicle, ADA, bike, both outdoor and long-term, and end-of-trip facilities all comply as proposed. For on-site infrastructure, this is one that was discussed at pre-application. For sidewalks, the DRB did not require a sidewalk along Engineers Drive. Chapter 15 does have, it allows the DRB to waive the requirement for a sidewalk for industrial development. No sidewalk is proposed nor required. For private utilities, Engineers Drive has existing above-ground utilities. Once again, the DRB waived the requirement for underground utilities. As the burying the utilities, they decided that the requirement was not proportionate to the scale of development proposed. For maintenance, Chapter 16, first for snow storage, compliance is anticipated. The applicant has proposed snow storage in the southwest corner of the property. Chapter 16 has further requirements for how snow storage must drain. There are a number of options. Final plans must demonstrate compliance with WDB 16.6.3.1. Staff is recommending that the applicant demonstrate that the proposed snow storage areas have the correct type A or type B soils on final plans, or excavate the area and fill it in with soil. Condition 21 covers this, and I'll just note as well, Jesse will bring this up. We've discussed another solution that I will bring up in his comment that I think will work. For solid waste, this complies as proposed. The applicant has moved the dumpster pad outside of the wetland watershed protection buffer and has proposed a screening fence for the dumpster. For landscaping, complies as proposed. The DRB has considerable discretion in determining landscape buffers, and at pre-application, you discussed the landscaping requirements for this property. You decided that a landscaping buffer along the northern property line was not required. There are not landscaping buffers required on any of the other property lines. Yep. For street trees, compliance is anticipated. The site has 2 existing street trees along the 270-foot frontage where 6 trees would normally be required. One of these trees is an ash tree. DRB recommended that additional trees are not provided at discretionary permit phase, but that the ash tree should be removed and replaced with a different species. The applicant shall replace the existing ash tree with a new street tree, and final plans need to include this detail, demonstrating compliance with our requirements for street trees. Condition 22 discusses this.
Have we looked into that gentleman who is out there drilling the ash trees with the...
Read about it, but we haven't looked into it.
Have you looked into it?
We have not.
I was just curious because I know our town has not looked into it, but it seems like it's a very promising activity, and if you could save an ash tree instead of having to cut it down, it might be at least something to look at before we say, yeah, got an exit. Just a curiosity.
Chapter 29, watershed health. For runoff and erosion control plans, the proposal complies. The proposed development is not disturbing more than 1/4 acre, and therefore is exempt. For wetlands protection, compliance is anticipated. The applicant must comply with wetland protections and delineate the edge of the Class 2 wetland to ensure the existing outdoor storage does not encroach upon it. Following pre-application, the applicant completed a wetland delineation. They have submitted a plan which shows the edge of the wetland and the 50-foot watershed protection buffer. The parcel has historically had outdoor storage within the watershed protection buffer and possibly within that mapped wetland. The bylaw states that Class 2 wetlands are protected by state law and by Williston's bylaw. Continued outdoor storage within the wetland is not permitted. It does allow for nonconformities located in watershed protection buffers to be maintained, repaired, and replaced and enlarged, provided that the degree of nonconformity is not increased. The applicant has proposed outdoor storage within the watershed protection buffer, but they've moved the dumpster enclosure and the snow storage that are new outside of that protection buffer to comply with this requirement. Outdoor storage may continue in the watershed protection buffer. However, the edge of the Class 2 wetland must be marked with boulders or concrete blocks on the ground and on final plans. Condition 23 discusses this, and you can see here this pink line shows the edge of the wetland, and it just comes onto the corner of the parcel here. The applicant has proposed outdoor storage within that area, and so we're asking that they move it back and mark the edge of that wetland where it is on the property. For outdoor lighting, it complies. The applicant has submitted a lighting plan that complies with our requirements. The table below demonstrates compliance. For signs in public art, no new signs are proposed. Future and replacement signs can be approved administratively. And lastly, impact fees. Impact fees may be assessed at the time of administrative permit. The applicant has indicated that the addition will not result in additional vehicle trips because they are relocating part of their existing operations on Engineers Drive to 99 Engineers Drive. What follows are a list of findings, conclusions, and conditions of approval.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Very comprehensive. Okay, Jesse and Ken. So like I did for the last applicant, if you could address two things. One is, do you have anything to supplement the staff report? And number two, do you have any opposition to the proposed conditions of approval?
We need to talk about the snow
Yeah,
storage now.
yeah, we do have something to supplement the condition 21, I think. I sent this to Andrew. Pull it up on the screen. So this is just a map of the mapped soil layers on the site, and we currently have the snow storage, yeah, right there, which is a CD soil, and we would just propose moving it to somewhere along the northern property line, which is in the Heinsberg A soil, which is the red hatch.
Okay, and for the benefit of others, why would you do that? Would the water I'm assuming that's not asphalt, and I'm assuming that the soils would accept the runoff as the snow melts.
Yeah.
In a better state. Is that why you're changing it or proposing to change it?
Yes, and it's required by
The bylaw specifically requires that type A or B soils
Yep.
Are used in areas that do not have existing stormwater or vegetation to adequately drain
Okay.
snow storage.
Like you said, they're better infiltrating soils.
Yeah, okay, I assume that's what you're doing, but, okay. Okay. And so that makes sense, and so we could capture that change in our conditions of approval. Because that's not currently, this is something that was introduced after the staff report, or am I off here?
Sorry, hold on. let me
I'm just
back up.
wondering, you're introducing something, so I'm assuming that it's not captured in the baseline.
I just sent it today to Andrew.
Yeah.
With the
So-
holiday break.
Yeah,
Kinda was
yeah,
a little late.
this is not a problem, I'm just getting my head wrapped around it.
So condition 21 just
Yep.
requires that the applicant demonstrate compliance with 16.6.3.1, which is that requirement I just explained with the type of soil. If they show on their final plans that they move the snow storage to that northern side of the meet the requirement, so we don't need to change the condition.
Okay, so this would be captured in final plans.
Correct.
Got it, okay. Any questions on that topic? That all
Not
seems to
on
make
that.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Good, Lisa? Okay. Okay, anything else, Jesse?
Just a couple comments, I guess, on the number 22. That's where we would use that's the street tree. And we're certainly willing to replace that ash tree, but for right now, it doesn't seem unhealthy. It's a fairly good size, nice shade tree, so we'd rather not take it down just for the sake of, worrying about it dying at some point.
Yeah, here's where that gets tricky, is that, I know Ken Pigeon. I know Ken Pigeon's character, and I know that you would replace it if it died. But as a general rule, staff doesn't have the manpower to, monitor, trees that, okay, let's just replace it when it dies kind of approach. And we'd be setting a precedent if we were to do it differently. And so, we're gonna ask you to take it down.
Just out of,
But I wanted to share our rationale.
what was the, Paul, you were talking about some.
Yes, so it's, I don't know a lot about it, but it's basically a chemical treatment of ash trees that is a technique that's used to prolong their life and protect them from the emerald ash borer. And my understanding is it's been successful.
What you would end up having to do, I would think, is if you want to go that route, you would have to make a presentation to the select board about what you want to do, because unfortunately, right now, the select board,
So
like Pete has pointed out,
let me just, I do know a little about this and those. First of all, I'm gonna somewhat disagree with you, sorry. I think there is some hysteria about this, unwarranted hysteria. I've seen a lot of healthy ash trees. I believe this could be one of them. I'm sure it could stay that way. The treatments that we're talking about are often done with neonic pesticides, which are terrible for pollinators and kill bees like crazy. So I don't want to see you cut that tree down, but I'd rather see you cut it down than inject it with that stuff. That's
Yeah, I
That's
don't
my
think
thought.
we go through the effort of treating it with
Right.
pesticides anyway. So.
You'd still, I guess you'd still be in the position where if we did treat it, you'd have to verify or monitor its health still, right? Ultimately.
yes, it has to be monitored.
And you'd have to provide some type of, because there's a frequent message received, Nate, okay? I'm not discounting what you just said. There's also, and I only know a little bit on this topic, but there's some interval in which you have to inject this. I think it's every 5 years or
Yes.
something like that.
3 to 5, I think.
Something like that.
It's 2 years.
Oh, it's 2 years?
It's 2 years?
Okay, so then now we're back to that situation where there would have to be some type of proof that the injection was being done on a following professionals' recommendations, and we start to get into that whole, limited staff, what is their core mission? Is it to monitor treatment of trees? And it just gets into a tricky conversation.
Well, I got guys who love to cut down trees, so I'm set.
Ashes are a great burning wood.
It's splitting too, so.
But could you put another tree there?
Yeah, that's what's proposed.
Well, without
Well, no,
cutting
don't
it
tear
down.
it down, just put.
Something small,
Put
not
something
expensive.
small, 6 feet away that would essentially plant its replacement now.
A bush, a woody bush. Is there room for anything?
So.
You know what I mean?
Sorry, what do you say?
So don't cut the ash
Don't
tree.
cut the tree down, but if the concern is that it will ultimately die, then plant its replacement 6 or 8 feet away or something like that. So that you end up having the trees there.
Why don't
Sort of
we
pre-plan.
Okay.
continue
Yeah.
this
Cool.
in
Yep.
deliberation,
Okay.
because
Okay.
there's many approaches
Many.
we could take on this.
Fair enough.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I have one unrelated question to the tree, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's just
Oh,
let
yeah,
the
yeah.
applicant finish with, do you have anything else on the proposed conditions of approval?
We're good either way on, we added a tree, a supplemental tree really, and wait for that to die, we're good with that too, but the other one was the boulders.
Yep.
And we're fine with that, we'll probably use boulders
Okay.
versus concrete blocks.
Okay.
Nice.
Nate, question?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the, in the proposed building, the vehicle wash system, is that all housed in the building, and is that washed, collected, and it goes into the sewer?
No,
Not the sewer, but
Okay, where does it go?
processed.
into the holding tanks.
Oh,
That's what the,
250 gallon tank.
so then it's just carted off, and where does it go?
ultimately to the municipal sewer, but we can't directly send it there. So
So,
it'll have an alarm system, but yeah,
Okay.
that's what has to happen, is it can't be connected into the existing municipal sewer, it has to be put in those
You have
holding tanks, which will have alarms. to-
And somebody has to come and pump you out, and then go dump it into the sewer? Okay.
That's what he
I,
told me.
yeah, all right.
No, it's processed.
I'm sure you figured it all out, I'm just
it's,
curious how it works.
it's probably not quite that linear.
Yeah, okay,
They process to get the salt out of the water.
got it, yep, makes sense.
It's an ionization system. Out of curiosity, how many washes does it take to reach 250 gallons, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, it's like if we got one of these salt winters where there's slurry everywhere, you're gonna be washing X number of.
Well,
gallons.
it's
Just curious.
2,500 gallons,
It's a 500?
2,500.
Oh, so it's,
There's two 2,500
Two,
gallon
so it's
tanks.
5,000 total.
so this is the mini system, the 250 add, right? The 250 gallon?
That's the holding tank,
Okay,
and then it will fill up in order to
Okay.
pressurize the system, but that's the water coming in, I guess you can, so to speak,
Okay.
and then the wash water goes to the holding tanks.
okay, gotcha.
Anything else, Paul?
No, I'm good.
Lisa?
It's a nice system.
Members of the audience, questions? Is there anybody participating in Zoom still?
There are.
Okay. No raised hands?
No raised hands.
Okay. Anything else, Justine, Ken?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good discussion. I'm gonna close DP 24-15 at 7:52.
Okay, thanks, catch you later.
Okay, next up is DP 24-21. If the applicant would come forward, please. I know Mr. Marshall, welcome.
Thank you very much. Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates at 10 Mansfield View Lane in South Burlington.
Rex Akabala from Mulkey Investments, 25 Rivendell Drive in Essex.
Great. welcome to you both. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Pete. This is a request for a discretionary permit to modify the parking and loading areas and modify the building to add overhead doors and update existing lighting. This property is located in the Industrial Zoning District West. Staff's recommendation is that the DRB take testimony and close the hearing, deliberate, and approve with conditions as drafted. There are several conditions added, however, they are very minor in nature. Project history, this is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. The permit
Now,
record is...
Emily, sorry. A couple of conditions added to what's the baseline?
Added, so we have our baseline boilerplate conditions.
Okay.
And then there's a couple special conditions that apply just to this project.
Got it, understood.
Yep.
Thank you.
So the building was constructed in around 1973 and has little to no change. A permit was recently approved for the change of use and to begin the interior renovations, activities that do not require discretionary permit approval. I do note that in my research to try to find property permit records, that there might be some protective covenants beyond what our zoning has, but that's a separate matter, not zoning. Conservation Commission and Historic Design Review was not required. Public Works and Fire commented. Public Works did not have any comments, and the fire comments are included with the standard limitations. No comment letters were received at the time of mail-out or up until this evening. The Industrial Zoning District West, a specific condition is included for final plans to identify outdoor storage areas inside or rear yards. Because this building dates to 1973 and we don't have a current site plan on file, designating these areas would allow the current or future tenants to have places for outdoor storage on the property. In terms of the dimensional standards, it complies as proposed. They're not changing the building footprint, but they are doing more than 1,000 square feet of site work, thus the requirement for the discretionary permit. The site work to reconfigure the overhead doors and add in loading dock space. They're also refreshing the architectural design of the building. However, this is not a design review district. No changes to access are proposed. Parking, the vehicular parking complies as proposed. They're not adding any spaces. They have an ADA space as required. Final plans would just need to identify short and long-term bicycle storage. The approved administrative permit does include the end-to-trip facility, and that's shown on the plan as well for a shower area. Standard conditions for on-site infrastructure complies as proposed. No changes to utilities are proposed. In terms of maintenance, final plans must identify solid waste containers and snow storage areas in compliance with Chapter 16. So solid waste containers on a concrete pad with screening around it, and then snow storage identified on the site plan as well. Compatibility, potential hazards and nuisances. So this is noted in the fire department comment memo and a requirement of Chapter 18 that if any current or future tenants are going to use hazardous materials, that the management plan for those materials be reviewed by the fire department. Landscaping, standard conditions complies as proposed. They're modifying the decorative landscaping along the front of the building. However, we're not recommending adding a landscape buffer on the southern property line. And to the north, the existing parking lot goes up to the property line. So the existing landscaping is sufficient as existing. Street trees, no changes proposed. The existing trees meet the requirement. And outdoor lighting, standard condition as well. The lighting plan just needs to be updated to provide total lumen output and notations for any timing or security lighting. Lastly, a special condition of approval for signage. Right now, they're not proposing a master sign plan. However, this is a multi-tenant building. Rather than having to come back in the future, if a future tenant, second tenant wanted a sign, including a master sign plan in the plan set would give them some flexibility in the future. And lastly, impact fees are not required for this site. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Like your comment on proposed conditions of approval, if you have any concerns about what's proposed, and then if you have anything to supplement Emily's staff report.
Very good. Again, Dave Marshall. We have read the staff report. It is complete, and we have reviewed the proposed conditions of approval. And the only one that we'd like to have some consideration on is concerning the bicycle parking. This particular proposed owner, this building being sold and purchased, the proposed land use had all of the employees have their own vehicles. Excuse me, take that back, company vehicles. So they basically are driving to work and coming back home in the company vehicle, and it basically doesn't require any specific bicycle parking. So in that particular case, that's the extreme. What we're just looking for is some consideration from the board in regards to perhaps reducing what otherwise are the minimum requirements for bicycle parking on the property, as well as the long-term parking, long-term storage inside the building.
So WDB 1485 says, can the number of required bicycle parking spaces be reduced? The DRB or administrator may reduce the bicycle parking requirements when they make a finding based on testimony and evidence by the applicant that the location and or nature of the proposed development makes the use of bicycles highly unlikely.
Okay, so to be compliant, what would be required?
A minimum of 4 bicycle parking spaces. So industrial uses, it's 5% of vehicular, minimum of 4, which would be 2 inverted U racks.
Okay. And what about the inside component?
That's basically a notation on the site plan. You know, long-term bicycle storage is basically a place where if there's an employee break room or employee area where they can park their bike. So the main requirement would be the external inverted.
Okay. Okay. So this is not an onerous, to be fully compliant, it's not that onerous.
Compared to other applications, that is a fair statement.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. We'll consider that in deliberative session. Because I'd like the other DRB members to weigh in on that. Anything else of the proposed conditions?
No, they're all acceptable.
Okay. DRB members, questions?
The only question I had was, so do the customers ever come to this facility, or is this all just primarily the workers and it's all done telephonic or whatever to deal with the,
Yeah, so, no, we don't have any retail.
so what I'm trying to say is there's no walk-in.
Nope, so,
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, during the day, it's mainly just me and maybe 2 other guys. All of our technicians are on the road.
Okay.
We've never had a bicycle.
So everything's done elsewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Other questions from DRB members?
Got nothing.
I had a question on 22. It says that you shall include a master sign plan, but that sounded like a convenience for you going ahead. Did you want to include one or no?
I'm sorry, I hard of hearing, I didn't get.
Yeah, item 22 says you shall include a master sign plan, and Emily was talking how about that might be more convenient for you when the second tenant comes in. But since it says shall, I'm asking you, do you want to do a master sign plan now, or do you want to delay?
That's a very good pickup, and I missed that, I apologize. At this point, I did review that with Rex earlier, because staff did bring that up and said, hey, here's the opportunity to minimize the pain of having to come back before the board, if you did want to have a master plan, and the response was, no, we're just good with 1 sign for the primary tenant. So that was at least the approach. We'll work on that some more.
The other thing to point out is, if they want to put any kind of signage on the building, even telling them, by the way, this is door 1, they'll be back visiting here for no reason if they don't have a master sign plan.
Correct.
Well,
So you
a
know.
certain number of limited directional signs can be approved administratively. It's if they wanted to kind of like a bigger, 24 square foot wall sign. And the master sign plan, I mean, you already have a site plan, it would be like a little table with the signage areas and then a little dotted box on the elevation where one might go. So it's probably worthwhile, because you or future folks, you never know.
It's good advice.
So, so what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm interpreting this incorrectly, but what I'm hearing is maybe we should make this, that you would have the option of submitting a master sign plan with final plans, as opposed to making it, it says shall right now, which means you will.
The condition could be modified to say it's recommended that.
Okay.
You shall have the option.
We'll,
Shall
we'll,
be
we'll amend that.
a rare condition with a may or a could.
Yeah, exactly. Good catch, Lisa. Okay. Anything else? Members of the audience, any questions? Any raised hands in Zoom land? No?
Nope.
No chats, no raised hands.
Okay, we're gonna close DP 24-21 at 8:04. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, the DRB is gonna now go into deliberative session. Okay, thanks, Scott. Welcome back to the Town of Williston Development Review Board for Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. The board is out of deliberative session. It is now 8:30. First up is a motion for the proposed certificate of appropriateness.
All right, this is a certificate of appropriateness HP 24-04. On the conclusions of law, we say that the proposed material does not respect the original character of the circa 1849 structure. Our conditions of approval, we include slate shall be replaced with slate.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Nate seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay?
Lisa?
Yay.
The chair is a yay. 4 in favor, none opposed. Proposed motion passes. Is there a motion for DP 09-01.27?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3. I, Paul Christensen, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all the accompanying materials, including recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of July 9th, 2024, accept the findings of fact and the conclusions of the law for DP 09-01.27 and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa seconds it. Any discussion? Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay?
Lisa?
Yay.
Chair's a yay. 4 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Is there a motion for DP 24-15?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Lisa Braden Harder, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials included in the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at public hearing of July 9th, 2024, accept the findings and fact and conclusions of law for DP 24-15, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. We have one change, and that's item 22. You have that. We want to strike the original and add 2 street trees shall be maintained in front of 99 Engineers Drive.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Paul seconds it. Any discussion?
Nope.
Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay?
Lisa?
Yay.
Chair's a yay, 4 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Is there a motion for DP 24-21?
Yes, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Nathan Andrews, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of July 9th, 2024, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 24-21, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based. We will be adding a finding of fact, number 5, to read, based on testimony presented by the applicant, the location and nature of the proposed development make the use of bicycles highly unlikely. We will also be editing condition number 22 to read, final plans should consider including a master sign plan per WDB 25 to accommodate future signage for the tenant space, as well as condition 24 to read, final plans shall include bicycle storage short and long-term in compliance with WD 14.8. 2 short-term spaces are required where the minimum is 4 per WDB 14.8.5.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay?
Lisa?
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 4 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 11th?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Nate seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Yay or nay to approve the minutes? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay?
Lisa?
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 4 in favor, none opposed. Is there anything else to bring forth tonight?
Yes, we had an FYI other business item, so status update on the appeal proceedings, the Brownell Lamarche subdivision. The environmental court made a decision and upheld the issuance of the administrative permit. There were questions that the appellant raised about the driveway and its setback. And then the court agreed with the issuance of the permit.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it?
I'd
Andrew?
like to introduce Hannah formally to everyone.
Welcome.
Hannah's our new planning technician.
Abandon all hope.
Welcome, Hannah.
These guys are very efficient, so.
Yep.
Yeah, Pete,
Learn-
thanks for
learn
getting us
a lot.
through that quick. You could be home by 9 tonight.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got some good mentors, so,
Yeah, it's been a great
Yeah.
couple first weeks. We're happy to have her.
great. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. We are adjourned.